So, Berto, it's that time of year where I try to answer everyone's emails, and we have a bunch of emails here from other people that I want to lightning round through.
Lightning round.
So, let's do it.
Relámpago.
My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and professor. Who are you, Berto?
My name is Humberto Castañeda, and I lightly repair vacuum cleaners.
Anonymous patron from Canada says, Hi, Dr. Honda and Humberto. I was curious if you guys have ever seen the following movies, and if so, what were your thoughts? The Butterfly Effect and Requiem for a Dream. For me, there is something about these movies that is so intriguing despite how dark they are. They carry that sense of existential dread intertwined with comfort and familiarity due to the realism they portray in all of us humans. If you guys have seen these movies, I'd be curious on your takes. Berto, I know you've seen Requiem for a Dream, but have you seen The Butterfly Effect?
I did, with Ashton Kutcher.
Yeah.
I liked it, but it was not as memorable as Requiem, nowhere near.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was a very interesting concept, the concept being that any small thing we do has massive repercussions over time.
The Butterfly Effect.
The Butterfly Effect. And the movie kind of explores that.
Is it like a sliding doors movie where like different outcomes happen, or?
Yeah, but it's not like in Sliding Doors, it's like this parallel track, right? Like, whereas this, I feel like it was really more about that sense of like, how
if only I had
insignificant, like this is such an insignificant moment. How could this be important?
And bad things happen.
Yeah.
So, what I'll say is, I haven't seen the Butterfly Effect, but I have seen Requiem for a Dream, and I saw it in the theater and gave it an 8 out of 10 on IMDb. I just looked up my rating that I gave it because I rated it when it came out.
I probably would have given it at the time a 9. I loved that movie when I saw it.
I mean, I certainly really enjoyed it. And for me, an 8 out of 10 is like, it's rare that I'll give an 8 out of 10. Like if I see a movie and I'm like, wow, that was a great movie, that's 8 out of 10. 10 out of 10 is like literally like a very important, meaningful movie to me. Like not only is it a great movie, but it's like core to my person, and a 9 is like close to a 10. So if a movie is fantastic, but it's not like a core movie to my personality,
right,
then it's probably an 8,
That makes sense. What happens is when I saw Requiem, I hadn't really seen a movie like that. Like, where
it's very unique. Well, Darren Aronofsky. So it's a second movie, and it's his first.
Pi was first, right?
Yeah. So Pi was a movie that I loved.
Yeah.
And saw it when it came out and was totally blown away. And it's a very amateur, low budget movie.
Right.
It's almost like a student movie in some ways. But it completely blew me away. And so when the studio saw it and gave him the green light to actually have a full production, a good enough budget to get, Jared Leto anyway, and Leto. And they, and he knocked it out of the park. I mean, it was totally Darren Aronofsky. It moved fast. It was dark. It has,
Jennifer Connelly.
Connelly. Yeah. The ending is,
grim. So depressing.
It's repeatedly brought up in movie circles of just like one of the grimmest endings of all time. Right. And it's written well such that by the time you get to the end, if you just watch the ending of this movie, you'd just be like, well, that's silly. But there's a very natural progression.
That's right.
Step by step by step to that point.
And the reason I'm saying I hadn't seen a movie like that, quite like that anyways, it's got no redemptive arc. It's just like, no, we're just headed down a dark alley.
Similar to Pi. It's just a descent into madness and tragedy.
And the other thing that I actually really thought was so interesting, the Tappy Tibbins through line. He's the motivational speaker. You keep seeing these little bits of his of the VHS tape that the mom's got, and it's like, and he's got his 3 rules, and they never actually explicitly tell you what the third one is, but you see it flash momentarily, and it's like the third one's no orgasm, but he's like no sugar, no meat, no orgasm, or something like that. Anyways, but that thing was so interesting because another thing that I hadn't quite seen in movies like that, where they're showing you this whole sort of like separate storyline of who is this motivational speaker and what's the but they just show it through these brief glimpses, and I thought it was so interesting and well done. By the way, the butterfly effect, I had to remind myself quickly of the thing is that he blacks out, but he's able to travel in the past during those blackouts, and he starts trying to improve things from the past, but inevitably causes all these horrific alternate realities.
Yeah. So you say that, and by the way, just to review Darren Aronofsky's filmography, which is one of the best and one of the most, I don't know, risk-taking and thematically deep, are Pi, Requiem for a Dream, The Fountain, which is one
I still haven't seen,
which is maybe my favorite.
I know, I have to watch it.
Yeah, I feel like I've built it up too much, but I feel like
I still need to watch it.
And I feel like you need to watch it a few times, because the first time I saw it, I was like, "Oh, wait, what?" And once you understand what's happening, and also it's not really a movie. It's similar to Mother.
Is Hugh Jackman in that one?
Yeah, he's who's the woman in it? She's a famous actress, but and then The Wrestler, which I gave a 7 out of 10.
I love The Wrestler.
Meaning that, and The Wrestler is fantastic, but it wasn't super important for me. Black Swan.
Oh my God.
Gave a 9 out of 10. That movie is so effective. I mean, it's similar to Requiem for a Dream and Pi, in that it just goes faster and faster into the madness and tragedy, and then it just wraps up so well, and the visuals and Padme is so great in it. And then Noah, which I liked, I actually
like Noah.
Yeah, I gave 6 out of 10. It's not amazing.
A lot of people did not like that movie.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed it,
which I didn't really understand. I mean, well, one could argue that a lot of people didn't see Pi, but Requiem for a Dream, Fountain, Wrestler, Black Swan, these are all not The Fountain. I don't think many people saw The Fountain, but if you go Wrestler, Black Swan, these are pretty mainstream movies that regular people would enjoy. Sort of like the suburbanites of the movie-going audience would probably enjoy The Wrestler and Black Swan. Yeah. But
although the Black Swan was, for all the, let's say, normies that saw it, was they're like, "Wow, that was crazy movie,"
Yeah. But with Noah, it's subtler than that. But also, I don't think Noah is super strong. That's why I gave it a 6.
It's not his best, but I still enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got some good elements, especially if you kind of let the story imagery and the religion interpretation kind of wash over you, and you don't think about it too much, I guess.
Right.
And then, of course, Mother, which you and I love.
Mother!
I think you give a 10 out of 10.
Oh, yeah. I've rarely been so mentally moved and indigested as I have during watching Mother.
Yeah, I gave it an 8 out of 10, but I think I need to bump it up to a 9, because there's one of the things that I will do is I'll revise my rating on IMDb when I think about a movie periodically, and I think about that movie periodically.
Yeah.
I think that is a part of my rating system, is does this movie recur in my mindscape?
Right.
Is it involved in my symbolic representation of human experience? And this movie definitely did that to me in the moment, but I didn't know it would last so long. I mean, it was 5 or 6 years ago that movie came out.
It was very odd, because so many people that I talked to, that I think there was this misunderstanding with it, where it's like they thought that the whole point was you weren't supposed to figure out what was going on, and then there was this big reveal, and then because they actually kind of saw the big reveal coming, they're like, well, it wasn't very surprising. But I was like, well, that wasn't the point. I think you missed the point.
Yeah, I mean, it's
an allegory, which is different than it's not an M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Right. It's not like it's all a dream, or they're on an alien planet.
Certainly the very first part of the movie, you're not meant to know what exactly is happening.
Right.
But pretty quickly, the metaphors are in your face. It's not like, what? The brother is killing what could this be?
Well, I didn't pick up on it even then.
Fine, but at some point, like, I don't think that there's a moment in that movie that you're finally supposed to go, wait a minute.
It was all a dream. Yeah. But there's a whole class of movies, and I would even put David Lynch in this, where the movies are telling a story and having interesting writing and acting and plot points, if you will. Each scene has its tension, right? In Mother, the mother is like trying to get the husband to listen to her or something, or she's suspicious of the woman. And so each scene has, you kind of know what's motivating the character, or at least the main character. But in terms of like a coherent story that is based in realism, it's not really there. Same with David Lynch, right? And so,
and that can be disconcerting, for
right?
people.
And when movies go too far in that direction, I don't like it. Like Lighthouse, I would actually consider to kind of be in this category.
Well, but it's funny is, I maybe I'm wrong about this, but I feel like maybe my tolerance for bizarre abstraction is maybe a little higher, but The Lighthouse, and both of us talked about this, was actually boring in spite of its weirdness.
Like the individual scenes.
Yeah.
Like at the very least, you can say for the first half of Mother, even if you don't like surreal movies, the tension is
certainly gripping.
Yeah, it's like what is.
And I'd say that The Lighthouse starts that way, right? Like maybe the first 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, I actually in the first 20 minutes of that movie, I was like, "Holy shit! It's the photography and
shot incredible,
and the risks that he's taking, and
and they're acting really well.
Yeah, the 4:3 dimension, aspect ratio,
and it's intriguing, right? Like at first, it's intriguing.
Yeah, I thought in the first 20 minutes, I was gonna like, this is a masterpiece.
It's a 10.
But then pretty quickly I find that with a movie, if you lose me for an X amount of minutes,
right,
like I'm gone. Like The Green Knight did this to me. There was I was totally on board in the beginning. Stacy was not, but I was totally on board. I was like, holy shit, this is a really interesting movie. I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm gripped. If you lose me for a certain point in time where I'm just like, either I don't understand what's happening for a long enough period of time, or I'm just bored out of my mind, then you can really never get me back.
That one's interesting. I did like The Green Knight, but I wonder, because Roma might have done the same thing with you, right? Like Roma might have lost you.
It didn't lose me. It just was
not like
boring from the beginning. I never, from
I see, that
moment
one never
one,
had you.
I was just like, okay, what? Like,
because you and I,
I respect it. I respect Roma. I don't know if I respect The Green Knight. We've
talked
Lighthouse.
about this before, how you and I are very, very aligned in our movie likes. Yeah. And every now and then there's an offshoot.
And I take offense to me not being a surreal movie lover. I love David Lynch 10 times more than you do.
All right, fair enough.
Eraserhead.
But I wasn't saying that you're not a surreal movie lover. And again, and maybe I'm wrong even about this other point. You were saying that there is a certain point when if things get too weird, you might
not too weird. That's not the right word, because Mother is fucking weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not too weird. I'm not moved. I need
that's
to be
different.
I need to be moved.
Because
so with David Lynch, it's so bizarre that David Lynch can move me with stories that don't make any sense.
Well, then maybe we're on the same page, because what I about The Lighthouse, a lot of people are like, oh, was it a little too weird for you? I'm like, no. Yeah. The weirdness is the least of my worries.
Yeah.
Or like, disconcerting? Was it freaky to see No, none of that's freaky.
Yeah. It was two guys yelling at each other and all this weird symbolic shit happening around them. And it,
If anything, I would say that it was trying to make too big of a deal out of the weirdness.
Right.
That I was like, okay.
Yeah. And so and then he has The Whale, which I'm guessing you haven't seen.
No, but I want to.
Yeah. Well, you gotta see it, because it's gonna come up in the Oscars.
Yes, I gotta see it.
You gotta start prepping
for it's Brendan Fraser's comeback.
Brendan Fraser.
It's
going to be, and there's a controversy because he puts on on a fat suit, and he I think he plays a queer character as well. But yeah, I'm really, you got to figure Aronofsky, Black Swan, Mother, the fountain, and then he makes the whale.
Yeah.
You're just like, wow, like, what kind of movie is this going to be? You just got to figure it's going to be something kind of interesting. But in terms of what you said, Anonymous Patron from Canada, you say that, these movies have, Requiem for a Dream have existential dread intertwined with comfort and familiarity due to realism. Do you know what she means by that?
Well, so Requiem for a Dream, unlike some of those other examples we were talking about, is absolutely grounded in realism. These are real problems: drug addiction, having to do sex for money, just the loneliness of getting older, and the people taking advantage of that. All those things are real. Mm-hmm. It is shown in a hyperbolic way slightly, but only slightly.
Yeah, the mundanity of a woman who is disconnected from society, and she's consuming all of her life through a television, and she's also taking a substance because it's prescribed to her, and she's starting to abuse the substance,
right? And
she's becoming more and more kind of disconnected from life and humans and regular kind of enjoyment of touching grass, as they say. It's pretty mundane, but the way he portrays it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then similarly with the butterfly effect, so you could have made a time travel movie about the butterfly effect that was really grandiose, and they travel back to the dinosaurs, and then you're like, this future is crazy. That's not the movie. The movie is all about family dynamics and him trying to fix small moments in his and his friends' lives, and then that having really ugly consequences. Mm-hmm. So I think that's part of why that comment. It's like, it is still relatable in that, those are real moments from real lives. And imagine if we had changed that little thing, we don't know what would have happened. Mm-hmm. We think it would have been better, but we don't know. Yeah. I had this thought, so I've talked about this before. When I was in my 20s, almost every night I went to sleep, I was thinking, oh man, I wish I could rewind time back to such and such date and start, because I would make all these different decisions along the way. Mm-hmm. And it was a persistent, kind of chronic thought in my head. Mm. And it kept going. And then when I got in my 30s, it was still there. It got a little less, but only because I started getting a little older and stuff. When I had my first...
It could have been getting older, but it also could have been that you just felt better about your current life.
That's correct, yeah. But then when I had my first child, it was like this weird instant cure, because I thought, oh, crap. If I went back in time, even
the butterfly effect,
a year ago, and I tried to recreate everything, I'm not sure I would end up with this child.
Right.
Let alone if I went back 10 years. Impossible. So I thought, oh, okay, well, this is now my timeline, and we're here. It was really weird.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I had a similar experience when I had just graduated from graduate school. I was in my late 20s. I was a novice therapist. I was pretty in over my head. I was working 70 hours a week trying to pay off my student loans, and I had this persistent fantasy about becoming a monk that lives in a cave and gives away all of his possessions and just meditates on the universe.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know this. That's great.
Well, this is 25 years ago. I had, and it was half serious. I didn't know exactly what it meant. I thought, but it did involve like an extreme divorce from materialism. Because, that's another thing is the Fight Club. The beginning of Fight Club kind of summed up my lifetime. It's like you're in this transition zone as a young person where you're like, okay, I can now afford to actually buy cheap furniture from IKEA, and I think about it a lot. Is that really what I want to be doing? But it actually is kind of fun to actually have the freedom to buy like a $200, coffee table and think about how it might match your end tables or whatever. And so I was in that transition zone, and I found myself hating where my life was headed, But what was really happening was I was just working too much and overwhelmed and didn't feel like I had any power in my life, and I had some optimism, but I wasn't sure. I didn't know what my future held. and there was a lot of pressure as a therapist and as a young professor, and it just felt great to have a fantasy of just like, you know what, I'm just going to drop everything and I'm just going to become completely detached from all materialism and any sort of career, and I'm just going to, you know, help society.
Walk the earth like Cain.
Well,
but not even walking.
I think behind the initial fantasy would be finding a monastery in Seattle, and just volunteering and saying, can I become a monk? You know, can I just
like a Buddhist kind of thing? Or?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I imagine that's the only thing that would really fit.
Wow.
But as my life became more manageable and I was more in control and had more free time, that fantasy just disappeared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It cured itself.
Yeah.
That's
but
so
I actually have I have a couple songs that I wrote
about that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Maybe I'll include a little bit of it right here.
Who will be there when I'm dead? Brothers, sisters, parents, cousins, aunts and uncles, nieces, nephews. Sure of the friends there will be few. Will there be children to survive me? Or will I die all alone? Will a wife be there to wear black? Will the minister even know my name?
Yeah, so the lyrics, you know, I was in my late 20s, and I've never been a very good lyricist at all, but when you're a songwriter, you got to write lyrics, so...
You have to have something.
Yeah.
With the lights out, we're less dangerous. Here we are now, entertain us.
The lyrics are, have all my common sense, and take all my money too, and give away all my materials, let them go back from whence they came. Whence? But, you know what I mean. Please take all I've got in spite of me.
Oh.
Please take all I've got in spite of me wanting to hold on to it. Oh. Rush up on me and take it soon before I kneel under the golden cow, which is, you know, just a terrible line. Just stupid. How did I get this way? Oh, I don't know how. Who will be there when I'm dead? Brothers, sisters, parents, cousin, aunts and uncles, nieces, nephew. I'm sure of the friends there will be few. Will there be children to survive me, or will I die all alone? Will a wife be there to wear black? Will the minister even know my name? And then it just sort of...
Interesting.
You know?
Wow. You know, my very, very first song at 15, the lyrics at the beginning were, start of a new age. What should I follow? An eternity of concern, trying to understand. It's the age-old dilemma.
That's not bad. I mean, at least it has a poetic
but
rhythm
it was very
to it.
like...
All right, let's take a break.
Emo.
When we get back, let's embarrass myself in other ways. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right, we're back from the break. Let's do an OPP, Berto. What do you say?
OPP.
These people became patrons all the way back in 2020 and have stayed patrons through thick and thin.
Oh, my goodness.
We have Lily from Bloomington, Minnesota. We have Valerie and Vidar from God knows where. We have Kaylee from Denver, Pennsylvania.
What?
Yeah.
Stop doing this to me.
Upper tier patron Kaylee from Denver. Int from Netherlands. We have Victoria from God knows where. We have Anna from Coolidge, Arizona. Christiana from Franklin, Pennsylvania. Morgan from Phoenix, Arizona. Wow, a lot of Pennsylvania and Phoenix and Arizona. Benzie from Michigan. Angela from Montgomery, Texas. Raphael from Goshen, Indiana.
Nice.
Noema from Livermore, California. Jesse from God knows where. Sarah from the Philippines, from Manila.
Hey.
Alex from God knows where. Anne from Las Vegas. Alyssa from Australia. Fairy Meadow.
Nice.
There's a town called
Fairy Meadow
in Australia.
That's nice.
And Alyssa is one of those fairies in that meadow.
That sounds like a Tolkien kind of town.
Totally. Philip from God knows where. Sylvia from New Jersey. And Alex from God knows where. Thank you for being a patron and staying a patron through thick and thin. Okay, Bert, we have to really do
Really lightning.
Really lightning, yeah. So Petra Maria says, would you please consider covering the topic of chronic illness and or pain, perhaps also with Berto's input given his past experiences?
Oof.
I have a lot of challenges in my life, recurrent cancer, adult diagnosis of autism, ADHD, and I consider myself to be pretty strong and resilient. I have had one debilitating health issue after another since the beginning of the pandemic, and it's been the most difficult period I've been through. While the constant pain and illness wears me down, I find the biggest issues to be surrounding my emotional and psychological well-being, and particularly when medical providers can't determine exactly what's going on and or minimize the severity of my experience. I do have a great therapist with whom I regularly talk about this stuff. I also know that I'm not alone, and talking about this stuff does help. But I would greatly appreciate whatever input y'all might have on regarding this topic, and I think a lot of other listeners would as well. Berto, what do you think?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think that I wrote this letter. That was my experience for the last 3 years as well. I've always been in relatively good health. I've had a couple of really bad accidents when I was younger, but in general, good health. I started having a lot of anxiety attacks, over the years after I was 30, but not a lot, not like daily or anything, just kind of with some frequency. But during the pandemic, I started getting
psychologically,
super sick.
And psychologically, emotionally, how has your thyroid issues been taking a toll?
Man, it's basically, I never feel safe anymore because I'm always thinking at any moment I could feel like absolute garbage or worse, right? So I'll be in an event like my anniversary or Christmas or anything or a party, right? And I'll be like on the outside totally fine and socializing, but on the inside I'm going like, I hope I'm okay. I hope I'm fine today,
Meaning what's around the corner?
Well, when I feel like crap, it's really not good.
Yeah.
And it's unpredictable.
And I don't know if we talked about this in the podcast. I don't think we have, but a year and a half ago during the anniversary, the podcast anniversary live show that we did for
the 13 hours.
13 straight hours. You were having one of your worst days.
Yeah, I felt like absolute garbage the whole time.
And you sat across from me and didn't indicate it at all. I knew that you might have issues, and I thought told you that if you need to take a break, like you just say something, you can go lay down on my bed or something. And because you're such a self-sacrificer, not only did you not take advantage of that, but you didn't even hint at it at all. And after we stopped recording, you didn't mention it. And I hear about it a year later when we're about to record our 14th anniversary. I hear you talking to my wife, and you're like, yeah, last time I was having one of the worst thyroid days of my life. I had no energy. I felt utter shit, but I just sort of powered through. And I go, what? I come around the corner and I'm like, what? And you're like, well, I didn't want to bother you with that. And
no,
I'm like,
it wasn't just bother you. There were two aspects to it. So there is bad and then there's really bad. It wasn't the bad where it's like, dude, I actually think I got to go to the hospital right this moment.
But you told me, you were telling my wife.
Well, there was
that
some
you
of
were
that
almost there.
Almost there, but not quite. And number one.
Which is
two,
really bad. I mean, that means you're
really
feeling really shitty.
No, number two.
Also, we could have just shut the whole thing down and rescheduled it. It's not like the listeners are going to kill us.
I understand. I wanted to get through it because the other aspect of it was I didn't want my life to shut down.
Yeah.
So there was a part of me that was like, F this. Like, no.
The other thing was you were amazing and energetic and on point. I don't know how you did it. You must have like a part of yourself that you can just sort of wall off and suffer like half of your body and mind or something. Because when I'm suffering, I don't function. Like I can't do anything.
So when I was a kid, I remember in Colombia, I was watching a TV show and they were showing surgery. And at first I had the natural reaction. I was probably 12 or something, maybe 13. At first I had the natural reaction, which was like, shy, like disgust or like whatever. And I remember my dad said something like, what? It's just an operation. And then I just like flipped a little switch in my head and I was like, okay. And then I just watched it. It was really weird. Because I was able to, in that moment, literally control my reaction. And I was self-aware that to think, wait a minute. So when I was like reacting like, ugh, I was just role playing. Like I don't have to react that way. Now, obviously, some things you can't control in the moment because it's an autonomic reaction, right?
Well, also you deserve to react
and you deserve to react, right?
Signal that you're suffering.
But I did,
or that you don't like a TV show about surgery,
right? But in that
that's
moment,
why we react. We're communicating to other people
and
like,
to ourselves, right? Yeah. But there was a part of me that thought, but wait a minute, how do doctors do it? Like I was kind of curious, like why are they not shocked and disgusted? Yeah. So that kind of set me on this path where with some things, not everything.
Yeah, just
some things,
so an asterisk on that is I actually have to train this into my trainees, which is that before you're a therapist, you can, because some people are pretty spontaneous in their facial expressions and their reactivity, and for those people, it's usually about a third of the class, maybe a half. I tell them that they can't be that way anymore. It doesn't mean they have to suppress all their reactivity, but they have to be mindful of it, and they have to be strategic and therapeutic with it.
They're making faces.
Right.
I'm like, ah!
Yeah, because literally I'll be presenting a case, just a regular client, and they'll be like having those faces.
Right.
And it's like, one, you need to not have those faces. And two, when, baseline, what you're trying to achieve is the place where you actually don't have the cognitions and the belief system that actually produces that, because all I'm talking about is regular client material. Like this client is a racist that I'm going to talk about and has massively racist points of view. You will have clients that will have racist attitudes.
Right.
Newsflash. So I know that before you would have all sorts of reactivity to that.
Yeah.
But when you are in the seat of a clinician and authority, you have a responsibility. You can't just be a citizen reacting to things. You have to now maybe it would be therapeutic to enact that reaction of disgust. I don't know. You'll make that decision in the moment. But if you just always react the way you would, and if you're at a dinner party or watching a TV show, like you will harm your clients.
Right. Okay. So
I wonder if that was a little bit of it, what you're doing.
It is, because what happens is that as humans, we've also talked about this many times. Look, we have a whole host of natural born actually reactions, plus a whole bunch of learned reactions, right? Like literally, like if you touch heat, like you're just going to pull away. Like it's just a thing. At the same time, I started being aware around that age because I looked at my dad, and my dad didn't react the same way to certain things. And I would look at these shows or these things, and I started wondering, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Now, there was also some fear that went with it that I thought, because I would talk to my dad about psychopaths or whatever. So I was like, oh, wait a minute, if I shut that too far, do I become a psychopath? Wait, you knew about
psychopaths when you were a 13-year-old?
Yeah, because my dad had the DSM, and we would talk about all these things.
Oh, my God.
And so I would wonder, though.
Is this podcast just a version of you talking with your father at the age of 13 going,
hi dada, hello dada. But I was,
by the way, sorry, I keep interrupting. The little asterisk on that is that lightning round is that when I was a kid, I had a very similar experience. I would watch football with my dad.
Okay.
And I would just be getting so angry at the Seahawks. I'd just be like, oh, Jim Zorn, you fucking, I would say fuck, I guess no one swore in my family, but I'd just be like, you idiot, or Dave Craig, or blah, blah. And my dad would, he wouldn't chastise me, but he would say something like, well, sometimes it just doesn't work out your way, or, I'm sure he's trying hard, or he would say something like that. I mean, he would be upset too, but he wouldn't be just unbridled anger and hostility towards your team. He would be upset, but he wouldn't have the just anger and disdain and contempt. And I remember really learning from it. I was like, oh, that's a much more respectable, more well-rounded
Isn't that interesting?
reaction. And I remember like really trying to be like my dad in that way.
That's so interesting.
And to this day, I'm actually like that. Like, I mean, not that I don't scream at the TV sometimes, but I'll see people just go ballistic, or they'll just reject the team, when the Seahawks aren't doing well or something. They'll just be like, okay, fuck the Seahawks, I hate them. And I'll just be like, well, you win some, you lose some, and I'm just glad to be a fan of a team. I mean, you might not be able to relate to this.
No. Listen. Directly, no. But the extreme is, just the other day I was seeing a thing Matt Damon was talking about on Hot Wings, the Hot Ones thing, where he was saying that...
Great show, by the way.
Think about how many things a guy like Matt Damon has seen in his life.
Yeah.
He was saying the most insane thing he's ever experienced and seen was going to a soccer match in Argentina, because the two sides were so divided. They couldn't have people in the middle parts of the stadium. They only had people on both extremes for the two teams, because they will literally kill each other.
Yeah.
Like, so the thing you're talking about, that modeling is actually really important.
Yeah.
Because it can get so out of hand.
Yeah.
But isn't it crazy how much we can model from our parents?
Yeah.
Because my dad in that moment wasn't chastising me either. He was just kind of saying, well, surgeons, but he was giving a similar thing. And I remember thinking, oh, okay, well, let me try that. And it's like this little kid going, boop, oh, yeah, you're right. I can be okay with this. Now, I also had this fear of like, well, maybe I could become a psychopath if I'm not careful. But going with the thing is that I think it's like, we all have this capability of being okay or not being okay.
I don't. I mean, I think I appreciate your thesis, and I agree with it in a lot of contexts. But when I'm suffering, it's so all consuming that I could never have done what you did, is my point. Like,
but I'm saying like the monk thing, that the monks where they, because I say, I could never lay down on snow with clothes off.
I mean, I'm either saying I could never achieve that level of monkdom, or I have never practiced
Sure.
enough to be there. So anyway, but psychologically, like, what's the deepest valley psychologically, if you care to share, that you've been in regarding your thyroid issue?
Yeah, that's hard. I think there was this moment not too long ago, in the last few months, in fact, where I thought to myself, I was like, whoa, is this just like the rest of my life now? Like, I'm just never going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And that was...
And not okay means no energy.
Meaning that I never know if I'm going to have a bad day. Yeah. And therefore, I'm always going to be like mentally consumed with that. Instead of, like, as an example, when just the other day at my mom's Christmas party on the 25th, the same guy you were talking about that's a super fan, when he arrived, he noticed immediately. He's like, oh, hey, you're very contemplative. I wasn't contemplative. I was literally not feeling well, and my head was sort of starting to hurt, and I was thinking, at which point do I retire myself from the party and go upstairs?
Oh, really?
Yeah, but then I was like, okay, I can. And
wait, at their 25th anniversary?
No, this was at the 25th at Christmas party.
Oh.
And I was thinking,
were you feeling okay your 25th anniversary?
Yeah, I was actually feeling great that day.
Oh, okay.
I was so grateful.
Yeah.
I felt so good.
Yeah.
But the fear was there, though. I was always during it going,
why were you wearing your glasses?
Oh, I've been wearing my glasses a lot recently because my eyes get very dry.
Oh.
And especially during these months because the weather gets dry. It's counterintuitive because you're thinking snow, but it gets dry.
Yeah. When it gets cold, it gets really dry.
Yeah. So my glasses are a little more comfortable. Yeah. But anyways, the point is that there are days like that. And so I started feeling recently, I was like, man, is this just... like, this is it. Like, now I'm going to be a person with chronic illness the rest of my life. And that got a little depressing to think about.
Were you depressed?
I don't think so. I have actually, I've in retrospective recognized that I was depressed in my, in 2005. In 2005, I was actually depressed. Mm-hmm. I couldn't get out of bed all the way till noon. I would miss work. I was depressed, and I didn't know it.
What's the depth of your fear during the thyroid issue?
The fear is that I can't be there for my kids. Either literally, I can't be there energetically, or like I'll pass away and I won't be there.
Like demoralized kind of thing.
Yeah.
So what I'll say, patron Maria, is I'm sorry you're going through that, having recurrent cancer, having a lot of debilitating health issues, one after another, and also not having people be able to tell you what it is, and thus there's no ability to treat because they don't know what it is, and potentially a lot of medical professionals not really appreciating what's going on with you.
No, dude, because you talk to them. I talk to my endocrinologist. They look at my lab results and they're in range. So they actually send me a letter saying, "Congratulations, you're doing great. Your labs are in range," and I appreciate it, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't feel great still.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on with the medical profession, but I see a lot of this, and I think it's this. I don't know what's going on with medical professionals in this area. They're obsessed with the typical range, and they of all people know that it's individualistic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they of all people should know that they got to listen to the patient. You know, if the thyroid is quote unquote within normal range, but the person is obviously suffering from all the symptoms of a thyroid problem, and I mean, at the very least, you would hope that the physician would be like, well, it doesn't look like it's thyroid, but something's going on. So
the closest I can relate to is, so I've programmed for fun a lot in my life. And sometimes when I've programmed, I make a little thing and then I give it to someone to try it out. And then they find a bug and then they tell me about it. And I look and see, and I can't find the bug. And then I get annoyed that they keep asking me about the bug because I'm like, I don't see it.
Yeah.
Now the bug is there.
Right.
I just don't see it. And I'm annoyed because I don't want to freaking look harder.
Yeah, I think it's maybe overworked, underpaid, because I'm just going to take a guess and say that if they only had one patient, in their entire
It'd
career,
be Dr. House.
They would,
like in Dr. House,
they would really sit down and figure out what's going on, and they'd exhibit that they cared. And when you have 10 patients an hour, it's just like every second that's ticking by, you're pissing someone off, and there's some.
Well, and imagine you're the doctor, and I come to you, and I'm like, "How's it going?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know. Some days I don't feel great, and some days I do." Like, you're already going, "Okay, this guy's okay," in quotes.
Right? They're not dying.
Exactly.
Right.
But for the patient,
yeah,
it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I mean, to me, these chronic pain issues and energy fatigue issues, or these kinds of things, I have known from personal experience, and I also know from a lot of clients and from you and others, that to some extent this is worse than death. I mean, I don't want to say that people would rather necessarily be dead, but it's close, because the amount of suffering and the uncertainty and the lack of support and the possibility that it's just going to get worse and worse and worse over time, and then something else will happen, the bad mood, the disability, the losses, all the losses of your body that it used to be, the loss of your ability to go to a party and not be paranoid the entire time that you can't have any fun anymore because there's this monkey on your back the whole time of just like, well, what if, or and you can't stay up late like you used to, or you know what I mean? It's like, it's horrible.
Yeah,
it is horrible. And to have anyway, it's so. Yeah, Maria, I get it, and you're asking me, like, why does this happen? And what I'll say is that, one, hardly anyone ever talks about it. So, but a lot of people are going through it, believe me, because the clients that I've talked to, I have a lot of clients in my career that have been in this situation, and it often, when we feel alone, it makes it worse, and we don't have anyone to talk to, and we feel like we're the weird one. Also, physicians they don't have the time, given the system and the economics, to comfort us. And that's not really their role, and they don't really consider it their role. So there should be, support groups, and the hospitals and the doctors should literally be in the office next door. They should be able to. So right next door is our 6 patients. If you want to sign this form and go in there and just like meet with them every week and have a support group, there you go. Because every physician has a percentage of clients, of patients.
Absolutely.
And so the fact that they don't do this is just our American stupid system.
I joined 2 Facebook support groups that I had never done before because of this, and they've been very helpful. And I have been well, I hope that I've been helpful, because I've sometimes responded to people in more desperate situations than mine and offered part of my experience or just ideas or whatever. And I think that that's so invaluable.
Right. And there are subreddits that you can join, by the way, as well. Also, in our culture, we have a general downplaying of grief and emotion and death and medical issues in general. So, you just kind of get, if you have an issue like this, it just kind of get
you don't want to deal with it. You don't want to hear it.
Yeah. In our culture, it's considered morbid or boring or dwelling on the negative or something. Also, many people, because of these reasons, will distance themselves from us when we have these situations. I mean, you will literally have friends that won't even talk to you or don't want to talk to you, and certainly don't want to talk about your suffering for various different reasons. Probably, I mean, not because they're psychopaths, but because they've been taught that they're supposed to avoid it. They interpret you as being overly negative and focusing on it because
it's
of
also
society.
Scary.
Yeah, and it's scary.
Mean you might have to deal with stuff like that.
Right, because they have to face their own mortality.
So I've been on the other side of this before I had any of these issues. I remember talking to relatives or friends that had chronic health issues, and I actually remember feeling like discomfort at having those conversations, both from the, yeah, I know we talked about this already, or like panic inside of me going, am I going to have to deal with shit like this?
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
We're not mentally prepared for this.
Yeah, it's a cultural problem. Also, we've been taught that medicine can solve anything. And so there's this, and I find that, because I've had clients in this situation, I find that no matter what we do in therapy to dismantle that belief system, we can never fully get rid of it, because it's so ingrained in our society that we are at the pinnacle of technology, particularly medicine-wise, that we can do anything.
Yeah.
That doctors know everything. There's always an answer. TV shows, but even just our culture propagate that myth. Also, I think physicians aren't ready enough to say, and I have had some physicians that are like this, but many are not ready to say, you know what, I'm going to tell you everything that I know, which is the cutting edge science regarding what you're talking about. I'm just going to tell you everything, but I'll tell you the topic sentence of each thing, but I'm here to tell you that we don't know everything yet. Right. And so even though I have a lot of expertise that I can enact here, I'm going to tell you that I know situations where the medical science of today is just insufficient to address it. And I'm sorry for that, you know? And so you have to, because unless you tell a patient that, they could think there's either something wrong with them or there's something wrong with their doctor, when in reality, it's just that medical science news alert just hasn't figured out literally everything about biology yet. Particularly the more difficult things that are way more elusive, like chronic pain or chronic fatigue.
Absolutely. And areas that have less research by their nature have less information.
Yeah.
There are some areas which, by the way, still have a ton of unknowns, but things like diabetes has had a ton of research, more say than some other areas. So
yeah, heart attack, for example,
right?
Like there's no reason why we would know so much more about heart attack and so much less about thyroid, other than the fact that heart attack is so much more noticeable prevalent and more fatal and more immediate,
Exactly. So there are things like that where you might have more information, but even then, it's still not a complete picture, Right. So yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
By the way, 3 things that I have found for myself is one that may or may not help the listener. One thing is finding things that soothe you very specifically, and then really like make a point of them. So in my case, like I have 4 pillows in just the right configuration. I have
when you're suffering.
No. In my bed now, like I have these 4 pillows in just the right configuration. So every time I go to sleep in my bed, I feel soothed by that.
Oh.
I have specific go-to movies that I fall asleep to listening, because I was listening to them when I went to the hospital, and it helped soothe me.
Which movies?
So Glengarry Glen Ross, for your consideration, the Enron movie, surprisingly.
These are not very comforting movies.
But they're talking. Yeah. And so if I put the volume at the lowest level, the talking soothes me. Okay. Anyways, but whatever it is for you, whatever it is
some
for you.
people are literally falling asleep to us talking right now.
That's true.
In the same way.
And anyways, and so the other 2 things are, one, be very selfish with your body and your nutrition. So, because sometimes people will try to like, oh, that's all in your head. You should still do blah. No, be selfish. Draw your own boundaries.
Yeah.
And then lastly, do your own. I hate to say it, but do your own research, not to contradict the doctor, just to be informed.
Yeah, I find that the optimal approach is which is that the doctor, the physicians are doing everything that they can within their time limit.
Yep.
And their model of like reading ranges for everything instead of being more specific. Like a common scenario would be, and maybe this happened to you, I think this kind of happened to you, which is that they're looking at the numbers.
Yep.
And they're hearing you talk, and it's not matching the numbers according to their understanding.
Right.
And but it's edging towards the bad numbers, but it's not in the bad numbers. And so if that's all that is happening, then they look at you and say, well, there's nothing I can do. Whereas if you start looking up research, and it's the same research that they're reading, it's not some alternative science research. It's general, mainstream science research, evidence-based research. And you start, and you don't go down some weird rabbit hole like some charismatic YouTuber that's talking about like energy healing and shit like that. It's like it's the solid science, and so you learn all that, and you don't have the foundational understanding, of course, that a medical professional does, but because you're super interested in it, you become kind of a little expert on, and you have to learn about, maybe enzymes and blood. Yep. There's all these ancillary issues that you kind of have to know a little bit more, but again, probably not as much as your physician. The next time you meet with your physician, you present, you're like, so I heard this. I'm not arguing with you, doctor.
Right.
I'm not, and I don't want to undermine you. And I don't know, I'm just a layman reading this stuff, but I read this stuff and I'm matching that up with my symptoms, and I started tracking my symptoms, and I have a graph right here that shows you my symptoms, and here are my experiences, and my levels are this, but even though I'm not in the obviously bad zone, I'm close to it, which according to some research does indicate that might happen sometimes. And so, and I do have some understanding of maybe even why this happened in the first place. You present that, then the physicians can utilize that, because you're not just sitting there going, I feel like shit, doctor. You're coming to them saying, I'm tracking this. I'm your lab assistant.
So I literally did that just last week because I
and long story short, I find that physicians will respond to that.
Absolutely. I had a test done by myself for my metabolic panel, which measures a whole bunch of things. My calcium was a little low. So I was like, that's odd. So I emailed my endocrinologist and I said, hey, this result was such and such. Here are some things I know, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. What are your thoughts? And guess what? They ordered a panel of additional tests just to check some things.
Yeah. They wouldn't have done normally.
They wouldn't have done. Well, why would they? Because they wouldn't have known to do that.
Well, even if they knew to do it, I don't know. But the problem with this is that it requires a shit ton of privilege.
It does.
Because you have to, one, be educated enough to even understand what's in these.
If we didn't have like the modern internet and resources and YouTube videos and things, where would I learn anything about anything?
Yeah.
Facebook groups where I can ask
questions. But not only that, but the privilege of your general education and intelligence level is far, far higher than the average medical patient.
And financial, like I can order a test.
Right. You have enough medical. You also come across as an educated, privileged person, and I'm just going to take a guess and say the physicians probably value your account more than someone else's.
Sure.
Also, you have the time to dedicate to this.
There's so many lucky, privileged things.
Your wife will take the kids off your hands while you spend 3 hours down some weird rabbit hole. So there's, that's a problem. Sometimes people talk about how money buys you medicine, and certainly it does, but I think also privilege gets physicians to fucking listen to you, know? So, it's an issue. Now, I don't blame physicians. In a perfect world, we would have unlimited funds to pay for, 10 times the amount of medical professionals so that they have 1/10 the amount of patients, and thus, 10 times the amount of time to spend with each of us and to research off, they could spend a day just reading research and like figuring other stuff out, because the other thing about the privilege of you and I and other people in our category is that we have enough intelligence or education or know-how to even track things. You think about the average person that they're just suffering and managing from minute to minute. They've got to feed the kids. They've got to get to work. They've got to deal with customers. They've got to, battle to, the traffic to get home. They got to run the chores. They got to pick up. When do they have time to even think like, how am I doing? Like, how am I feeling right now? And there's so, especially when you're in the zone of fatigue and energy issues, there's so many things you have to keep track of, sleep and diet and, I don't know, there's just so many imperceptible intangibles that you have to like be able to rate in your mind of just like, okay, well now I feel this way. Cause sometimes you just feel kind of bad, but you don't really think about it, especially if it's chronic, it just becomes part of the background. But when you really think about it, sometimes you might even forget what feeling good felt like, you know what I mean? So anyway, the point is Maria, it sucks. And chronic fatigue, and, chronic debilitating health issues, cancer, as you're talking about, treatments that have a lot of side effects. It's the worst. I mean, it really is one of, as I get older, I would hear people when I was younger, there would be older people that would say, yeah, I'm ready to die. I feel like I've lived a great life and I feel like I'm ready to. I was always just aghast when they would say, I was like, how could you possibly say that? It doesn't make any sense.
You want the ride to end. Yeah.
Why would you want life to end? Like, because that's certainly not how I feel. Like, even if I'm, even if my brain is working at half capacity, I would imagine I still want to, experience the glory of reality, And so, and these would be atheists that would be saying, people that don't believe in the afterlife, just be like, I think I'm done. Well, as I get older and you start to experience the numerous health declines. I mean, just like just even my eyesight alone, the amount of, I have to wear glasses to read, and then I have to wear glasses to see far. Like, I can't see far and I can't see close.
Right.
And
you're like, who designed this? Come on.
And, I no longer sleep throughout the night. Like, every night I go to sleep, it's just complete mystery as to what's going to happen. I might get like moderately okay sleep or super shitty sleep. It's one of the two. And so whereas, rewind the clock even just 3 or 4 years, and
we were so carefree, right?
I would fall asleep like instantly, and then wake up 8 hours later, like, or even, I don't know, and be fine. So
I think back to where, like, maybe, let's say 10 years ago, if I got a call at like 12 from someone, like, come out somewhere, like, okay, I'm driving, I'm over there, I'm partying.
No, I was well known for always being a yes man in situations like that. Like, I'd get 3 hours sleep, and maybe be a little tired, but I'd manage. Now, like, if things aren't dialed in just perfectly, like, I can't. No way. I'm completely non-functional the next day, and so, and this is just the beginning. I'm 52. I'm not 85, so I now can relate, because at some point, if this keeps getting worse and worse, like, I just take me out. You know what I mean? Take me behind the shed and put a bullet in the back of my head.
But then you see Papa Lalo and Liti, my grandparents.
Certainly.
And they are going strong in mid-90s.
But I wonder if when they think about it, they're especially if they're religious, they're just
she's already talking about it. She talks to me about how she a few years ago, she would not really mention it. Now she's like, I'm not going to be around, who knows how much longer, but, she'll talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's one, sort of vibe, but I think another is
the I'm done.
Is I don't want to do this anymore. Like, it's only going to get worse. I mean, there's going to be a threshold upon which, because once you get older and you develop, a problem, physicians, they're like, well, you're old. So
Right,
you know,
yeah.
you develop a certain, you know, common issue. They're just
Yeah.
like, well, you know,
that happens.
there's no point in treating it because,
Yeah.
you know, you're just getting old and it's just going to cause too many problems to
Yeah.
treat it. So this is your life now. Whereas you have that when you're 35 and they'll
Yeah, of course.
they'll treat it hardcore because they're like, well, you're young.
Yeah,
and so there's this creeping notion getting into my soul of just like, if there is a God or a universe or that's designing this on some cosmic level, I could see them working this into it to our lives to give us like almost a satisfaction with
A
dying.
reason to be done.
Yeah, like it would be
Yeah.
really sucky if like everything's glorious until the last minute, right?
Yeah.
But if things suck for a good 15 years and it's only getting worse.
And then you're like, okay, all right, I get it. You made your point.
Yeah, you made your point, universe. Like, I'm ready to go. Take me
Yeah.
now. And, you know, so, but that's just the normal progression, you know, for some people like Maria. You're experiencing that 85-year-old, you know, horrible health, chronic problem at a younger age. And, you know, my point is that it's completely demoralizing.
Yeah.
But in my experience, with support, with at the very least support, like other people in your shoes that can emotionally be there for you, that you can complain every day. You just be like, today I feel like shit. Who else, you know, who else feels like shit? I feel like shit too.
Yeah.
I'm with you. You know, who else hates their physicians for not listening? Me too. You know, and then from there you can kind of work your way up.
Because you can commiserate.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's take a break and get back. It's really lightning round.
To our
We're-
lightning round.
Okay, Berto, I actually have a timer that
Okay. Let's do a timer.
I don't usually bust this out, but
Let's do it.
It's a 2-minute
Is it an
timer.
egg timer?
It's a 2-minute timer, and so when
right.
this you know, the sands of time pass
We're done with the topic.
in the middle of a sentence.
Okay.
So I'll turn it over after I read the email. Upper tier patron Peter from Philadelphia says, about once a month I have a dream that I am working at a video store where I once worked in high school. I understand this dream as part of reaching back towards nostalgia. Do you ever have dreams like this? Berto, do you ever have dreams where you're going back to a previous time?
I do. I used to have recurring, I would call them nightmares, that I was still enrolled in college. Well into my late 30s, I would still sometimes have this recurring dream, and I would have panic in my dream because I would be like, oh, I haven't been to school for months.
So does it have to do with nostalgia?
No, it was it was fear of not showing up to class or not doing my homework, I guess. But as far as nostalgia, I have dreams every now and then with friends or old things that happened, so I can relate to that.
Yeah. For me, I don't know, obviously, because no one knows why we dream, or even like it's particularly like the elements of our dream. And there's models of understanding that are compelling. But point is that, and I don't know if, Peter, you're saying that having a dream about a past moment in your life automatically for every human being has to do with nostalgia, because that certainly is not true. Or if it's just true for you, which of course it'd just be true for you. But in my view, when I dream about, and of course there's a lot to say, but we only have 1 minute left, is that when I dream about the past, and I don't do this so much anymore, but for a long time I used to have this very frequent landscape for a dream that was this woods that I used to play in.
Oh, in Issaquah.
Near my house. I mean, there were a lot of woods that I would play in, but this was like a specific woods. It was kind of a little bit more unknown to me, this woods, and it was vast. It's no longer exists. Like Kalahani, that entire zone now is this
sad.
one big, like, you know.
But you have recurring dreams of you being in that forest.
With those kids. And the way that I interpreted it was, because I'd be like 40 years old having a dream about that. And the way I interpreted it was there's a lot of firsts, you know. It would be like the first best friend I had was during that time. The first time I was embarrassed socially was during that time. These are archetypes that my brain will go to as a part of the landscape of my dream, and that's the end of 2 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, and I have this long story I want to go into.
Also, so Peter also says, since you and Humberto seem like movie buffs, do you remember the days of going to video rental stores, Bert?
Oh, do I? So when I first moved up here at 15, that was my brother and I. Probably our favorite thing was on the weekend, Friday. Mom would drive us down to the video store, and we would get to pick out a couple of movies, man. And we wander the aisles, Steven Seagal, whatever, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Predator, whatever. It was awesome.
God, Seagal and Van Damme.
Yeah.
Jesus
oh my
Christ.
gosh, we loved martial arts movies. We loved.
Well, there's better martial arts movie than Steven Seagal.
Well, sorry, but these were bonding moments for my brother and I.
Okay, well, I mean, there's a couple of Steven Seagal movies that I didn't turn off when
and Scarecrow. You can probably talk about Scarecrow.
Oh yeah. So absolutely, I remember going to video. I mean, I feel like to ask people our age, do we remember going to video stores? It's like, well, yeah, it was just yesterday.
That was our life.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be like saying, do you remember? I don't know. It's I imagine for younger people, it's more of like a distant memory. The majority of my adult life was going to video stores.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I absolutely remember. I've always been obsessed with movies since I was a teenager, to the point where when I was in my 20s and had no money, I would actually dig through my cushions in my car to try to find quarters and dimes and nickels.
Just enough to rent a movie.
Just enough to go to a movie, or maybe rent a movie. Yeah. I mean, I went to Scarecrow recently. So Scarecrow is this internationally
mind-blowing.
known video rental store in Seattle, and it's always been this way. It has this just vast. It's like the Library of Congress or something.
Yeah.
It's like every movie is meticulously cataloged and placed on the shelves. The last thing I'll say is that I have a slight urge, because I'm getting into albums,
right,
into vinyl, which makes no sense because everything is on Spotify, and I'm a huge Spotify.
No, but vinyl makes sense, man. I've always thought that vinyl makes sense.
But just it's not logical though, And so, but there's something about holding the thing and playing it, and I think that in 5-10 years there will be and it's probably already started, a VHS revival where you actually go where Blockbuster will.
VHS are so shitty though.
Or something else like DVDs will be probably DVDs, right? So
I just don't know if there's an analog.
Because but the analog is because think about yourself when you sit down on the couch, you're like, what are we going to watch tonight? There's, with all the streaming services, endless list.
Oh, no, I do agree with that.
But can you imagine? And the whole thing of like, you get in the car and you drive to the church of movies, the Blockbuster, and you walk in and you have to pick something in this store. Yeah. You can't, you don't want to walk away with nothing.
I guess because they could be niche and boutique-y and stuff. I like that.
Yeah, it could be like a video store that's geared towards you and me, of our generation or something. And to see the cover and
a horror movie video store, like an indie movie store,
and you get your pizza and then you put the DVD in. Yes. I think it'll come back. All right, next email, upper tier patron Jennifer from Jackson says, I've never heard you mention Stephen King novels or movies. Are you a reader of his? We are the same age, and until my 20s, I always swore I would never be a fan of his. We were taught that his style wasn't legitimate literature. I was told by my church he was demonic. Anyway, I think the volume of his writing he has published is another reason he's a master of his genre. Just curious if you have an opinion on Stephen King. Berto.
I've read very few things by Stephen King, and I've loved all of them, but the one that stands out is Needful Things. I really enjoyed that book. I did read the short stories like The Lawnmower Man and The Shawshank Redemption and stuff like that. I think I read one more book, but I can't quite remember. Oh, I did. It wasn't Mystery. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I read Mystery.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've only read Dreamcatcher, and I don't think that's one of his lauded books. Okay. I don't even know why. It was on audio tape. Okay. And I loved the first half, and I think it was a pretty typical Stephen King novel in that the characters are really interesting, and the suspense is really interesting, and the sort of sci-fi aspect is like, ooh. The second half, I just felt like it was kind of like a Scooby-Doo episode where it's like this wild mystery, and then everything kind of wraps up, and all these things happen, and it just felt, the suspense and the build-up I felt was way more interesting than
Interesting.
Anyway, kind of like an M. Night Shyamalan movie as well.
Shyamalan.
But I decided to. You asked if what I think about his movies, and I actually made a list of. At the top of my list is The Dead Zone, which has directed by Cronenberg, and it has Christopher Walken, 1983.
Yeah.
It's not a great movie, but I saw it when I was 12 years old, and it was mind-blowing because it was, it's funny to think back, like superpower movies weren't really common, and this was this is a superpower movie.
I think that's one of the ones we rented, my brother and I.
The Shining? Or no, The Dead Zone? Yeah. I recently rewatched it. I feel like it holds up. My number 2 is The Shining.
Yes.
I only put The Dead Zone number 1 because it was really sentimental to me, but The Shining is a legitimate awesome movie.
It doesn't follow the book as closely in some parts, but it's so good.
Yeah. And of course, there's all this controversy because, of course, he hates that movie.
Yeah.
Another movie that probably isn't awesome, but I think is still pretty good, but for sentimental reasons, I saw it when I was 13, and I repeatedly watched it, is Firestarter. Drew Barrymore and David Keith, a young Drew Barrymore. Really great movie. I highly recommend Firestarter, Drew Barrymore, 84. And then, of course, Stand By Me.
Oh, my gosh. What an epic movie.
Another, I saw that when I was 15 years old in the theaters, and it was geared towards me, like my age.
Right. I actually think I read that one, too, now that I think about it.
Misery, of course, number 5. Great movie.
I love Misery. Oh.
Dolores Claiborne, 1995. Great movie.
I didn't see that.
Kathy Bates, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Christopher Plummer. Shawshank Redemption, I have number 7. I loved it when I saw it in the early 90s, but upon rewatching it, I love certain scenes are really great, like when he gets the beer and they're on top of the roof. But there's the general storyline. I don't know if there's been too many other movies like it, but I find that a lot of it is really schlocky. I mean, not terrible, but just like, and I wouldn't be so weird about saying this if there weren't so many people who thought of Shawshank Redemption as the best movie of all time.
Well, no, I love that movie, and I haven't seen it in a long time. I can see what you're saying, though. It's just that it brought so much entertainment and joy to me.
Yeah. I mean, when I was 23, when I saw this, it was, one of the pinnacle of, it moved me in this really deep way. But I feel like as I've gotten older, it's, I don't know, anyway.
I gotta rewatch it.
Number 8, The Running Man, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I forgot that was his story.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Number 9, Maximum Overdrive with Emilio Estevez. And Stephen King actually directs it. It's good. It's a good one, 1986. Cujo, number 10. That
is intense and traumatic.
Carrie, of course, number 11. That's a classic. I really liked The Mist. I mean, I gave it a 6 out of 10.
I've never seen that.
So
that was recent, right?
2007.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, jeez.
Thomas Jane. I really liked it. I liked the ending. The ending is brutal, just brutal.
I'll have to watch it, I guess.
But it's kind of one-dimensional. Very Stephen King, I would say.
Okay.
Number 13, The Green Mile.
That was touching.
I gave it a 6 out of 10. It has some really great moments.
Yeah.
Number 14, Pet Sematary, 1989.
Oh, yeah.
Number 15, Christine.
That was very good.
Which I gave a 5 out of 10, but I remember liking it more than. Number 16, Dreamcatcher. They made it into a movie. The movie I thought was terrible. I gave it a 4 out of 10. And then
Well, so there's the old one and there's the new one.
Well, the new one.
I love that new movie.
I gave a 4 out of 10.
You didn't like it?
I found it to be ridiculous. I mean,
oh my gosh, no!
This it is a god. It can do whatever it wants, and
it's a force of nature.
Who cares? Like, the children are doomed because there's nothing they can do.
That's right.
So
and finish your thought.
It's just dumb.
It's awesome.
It's not interesting.
It's creepy.
So
Needful Things, by the way, is really good.
Okay. And by the way, I listed all the other movies about his works that I haven't seen. And there's more. So that was a long list I just gave you. There's probably 30 other movies that I haven't seen. Needful Things being one of them. All right.
You know which one was terrible? It was Lawnmower Man.
Oh, I did see that one.
That was,
That's not on my list.
No.
What did I give Lawnmower Man? Let me look it up, Berto.
3, 2.
Lawnmower Man. I gave Jeff Fahey. Remember him? He was a big thing back then. I gave it a 4 out of 10.
Yeah.
Anonymous patron, Berto, he says, there's a video called Let's Go Whaling, which explains in detail the way to hook video game players into addicts. Considering the new Diablo Immortal just came out, this email might have been a while ago.
It was.
And will be downloaded by millions of kids around the world, maybe it would be good to warn parents about the gambling aspect of these predatory games. I'm going to switch to my 1-minute timer, Berto. Go.
I hate it. I hate it all. Any of those games, I didn't get into those Farmville, whatever it's called. I've never touched Diablo Immortal, even though I love Diablo. I've played Diablo 2 all the way through with different characters innumerable times.
Yeah, that's one of your top games.
Yeah. I wouldn't even touch Immortal. I hate that mechanic. Oh, there was a game I loved.
How does it work, the gambling aspect?
Because you have to like buy stuff to play. You can't. So there's this game I loved that was a drag racing game on the iPhone, on the phone. And I loved it. And I got to a point in the game where they make it physically impossible for you to progress without paying more money. Yeah. And I was done.
Yeah.
It breaks
my heart. It's so dumb because you obviously can make enough money from just regular...
Charge me...
Diablo Immortal,
$60 for a great game. I gladly will pay.
Yeah, it's a normal way to make money. Yeah. Anonymous upper tier patron, she says, "Hello, Kirk and Humberto. About how high is each of your spice tolerance, Berto?"
I mean, okay. Before I got sick, I was really high. It's come down a bit because for about a year I couldn't eat spicy food because everything was triggering me on. So now I've gone back to eating spicy, but I think I'm more normal now.
Really?
Yeah. Like, really? I mean, not normal for someone who likes spicy food.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I would say I'm medium. I'm not as high as Berto. Although we had some spicy stuff. We've had some, because I don't know how we compare, but one time when we had the Mediterranean stuff.
No, it was the remember the Nepalese soup?
Nepalese.
The 7-level spice.
Yeah. That one I was like, holy crap, you can handle a lot more spice than I. But then, recently, I guess, maybe.
That was peak Berto.
We had other spicy food, and I was like, oh, this isn't actually so bad. And you were kind of in that same zone. So sometimes I wonder. But anyway.
No, I've gone, because you know how it is. Like your receptors get used to it. But if you stop eating it, they kind of reset. So.
Yeah. Yeah, so generally speaking, I find that I can handle more spice than pretty much everyone around me except for you.
Yeah.
And I don't really take pride in it. It's just kind of a product of all the stuff I eat.
Yeah.
But sometimes I wonder, because there's a Taco Time burrito, habanero burrito that I love, and my mouth is watering thinking about it, that about halfway through, I have to stop eating it because it's so hot.
Oh, my God.
And so... Normally, especially a fast food, like I'll go to a restaurant and they'll be like the spicy burger,
right?
And I'll get it, and I literally can't taste any spice.
Right, it's not spicy.
I'm like you added maybe a drop of Tabasco, you know? And so I'm kind of bewildered by this Taco Time habanero burrito. I'm like, am I losing it? Anyway, next email, annual anonymous patron. She says, Dr. Kirk and Humberto, after being lied to by someone close to me and grappling with it for a while, I've wondered if I was ever owed the truth to begin with. In what situations is it justifiable to lie? When is it okay to lie, Berto?
You and I have a difference of opinion that we've debated a lot about. I think that there are cases where not saying the complete truth or maybe even outright lying is maybe necessary or maybe better or whatever. In general, I think honesty is the best policy. I certainly think that for big things that has to be the case. I think the society runs better on it. I'm thinking of stuff like when you maybe have a friend and there's something that you feel like if you're totally truthful, it might be very hurtful. Maybe there's a way to couch it or only tell them partially or tell them a different way. So.
Yeah.
That's what I
Well,
think.
the first thing I'll say, annual anonymous patron, is that, rather than us talking about when it's okay to lie, it sounds like you've been traumatically lied to. So I'm guessing that it was
That was
wrong.
not okay.
Yeah, it was just not okay. And you're probably getting the impression, maybe even being gaslit into questioning whether or not you're valid in being upset about being lied to in these significant ways. And I'm just going to take a guess and say that that is unfair to you. That if you're asking this question, I'm pretty sure you've been significantly lied to, and it was harmful and it was wrong. And I don't know why those people lied to you, but it was still wrong.
Yeah.
But to answer your question directly, I would say, and generally speaking, I am a staunch believer in the truth. You can decline to answer a question, for example. You can be, I'm sorry, I don't want to answer that question because it puts me in an uncomfortable place, rather than lying, for example. You can also tell the truth, but explain it more. You could be like, okay, well, I have to tell you something,
Right.
but I want to give you the context, and I want to explain it so that it you understand the full picture. Because if I just tell you the short story, I think it'll paint a picture that will make me look bad, but I think it's only kind of bad that So there's other ways of telling the truth. There's a lot of, but off the top of my head, there are very few instances where one would ethically lie, and that is that, like, for example, for me, when I need to protect confidentiality, say if I had a famous client, and this has happened to me before, and someone asks me if I know anything about that, that person comes on TV and they're just like, they say like, do you know that artist? And, I might, for example, lie and say, I have no idea who that person is because that person is my client. I'm straight up lying to my friend, but it's understandable, right?
Yep.
And it doesn't harm my friend that I'm saying that, right? A gray zone that I can think of off the top of my head is that sometimes it's considered ethical to not tell your partner about infidelity moments that you've had. You either, and again, it's gray zone, but you either potentially just want to break up with that person and spare them the traumatic harm of telling them what you did to, behind the scenes. And of course, this depends on you doing it right away.
Right.
If it's been 3 years of you, it's a different story. But if you had a moment and it's clear to you that, well, I think I'm done with this dating relationship or something, so I don't need to tell them. So, and even if they ask me, I'm gonna be like, no, but I'll shoulder this burden. I don't want to foist it on them. Or even if you stay with your partner, some people would consider it ethical to not tell your partner because you need to do what you need to do to fix the problem, to stop cheating, to address your problem as to why you ended up cheating. Maybe it's alcohol or something, so it's not like you just sweep it under the rug and you don't say anything. You feel bad, you feel shameful. You're gonna address it, but in the end, you're not gonna bother your partner with, inserting some story into their head that's going to make them overly paranoid. You're doing all the work yourself, and you're gonna you love your partner so much that you don't want to burden them with it. Very controversial thing. It's hard to know exactly what to do, but you'll see different points of view. Another gray zone is avoiding pointless arguments. Like you're at a family gathering and some distant relative starts yammering about some political issue, and they ask you what you think about it. I am prone to just be like, I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Or, well, what you say sounds reasonable to me, or I don't know. Because I'm just like, I don't want to get
Which
into
is technically a lie, but...
It's absolutely a lie, but I don't want to get into it, and certainly this person doesn't deserve me to bother them with my... well, not bother them, but... Again, who's being harmed? If I lie to my distant relative in this moment, are they being harmed? No, because now, and that's the risk, right? What if he finds out that I'm lying?
Right.
He's going to be like, holy shit, he was lying to me. I can't trust him. Am I, Kirk, willing to take that risk in that situation? I probably would be, because I wouldn't care.
And there's other gray zones. Like if you're being interrogated by the police, it's perfectly fine to lie to them because you don't want to get yourself in trouble. You know what I mean?
And what I'll say generally, and people have heard me obviously yammer about this a lot, but there's been a cultural shift towards accepting more and more and more lies, not only just personally, interpersonally in relationships, but also online, politicians, famous people. It's just par for the course. It's like, of course people are lying. That's what they always do. And I think it's getting worse. And I will hear people giving advice to others, like if your spouse asks you, do I like fat in these jeans? Of course you're going to lie, because that's what you do. Of course, again, maybe that's one of those gray zone things, but if your partner knows 100% that you're always lying about that, then why would they ask you that question to begin with? And even if you're being honest, they're not going to believe you because you're a known liar about those things.
I think though that there's a subtle difference between lying and sort of like being brutally truthful.
Well, so this is what people will often break these things down into dichotomies, right? So take example that do I look fat in these jeans? Say for example, I'm in this situation. I'm not, but if my wife had gained some weight and put on some jeans and said, do I look fat in these jeans? People will break it down to dichotomy. There's either a yes or a no.
Right.
And a no is a lie and a yes is the truth.
Right.
That is not the way these things are.
Right. That's not the only thing you can do.
But it's also not the landscape. The question is nuanced. It's not a binary. So if she asked me that question, I'd be like, well, if you're asking if you might seem possibly a little bigger lately, maybe, I don't know, but I love you and you're super hot to me and I have zero less attraction to you now than I did before.
Yeah, it's just that the thing you're saying right now.
You're a beautiful, wonderful human being in all respects, and everyone sees that. So, does that answer your question?
So the thing you're saying right now is very centered and very correct. It's just that a lot of people will simplify that to, oh, so you do think I'm fat in these jeans.
But if I had that kind of relationship, with someone where things were that simplistic, then that's kind of my fault because I've set up a relationship that is so set up on such a superficial, stupid thing that my wife would care, and would extrapolate so much based on such a superficial thing.
Totally agree with it. I'm just saying the sadness of the reality is that if this were in a sitcom and the scene played out and the significant other said something beautiful like what you just said, I almost feel like it would be played for laughs because the audience was meant to be like,
that's what I'm saying.
Oh, he really does think she's fat.
That's what I'm saying. So it's not just the lies, but it's the stupid way our culture is oriented towards certain things that almost compel a lie.
Yeah.
Because it would be unloving. People will literally say this, that if your husband says, yes, you do look a little bigger, he obviously is not a good husband.
Right.
He doesn't care about your feelings.
Right.
How the fuck
you're meant to be completely
is caring about someone's feelings lying to them?
Yeah.
Now again, in some situations, even myself, might I because the other thing is like, well, define fat. I won't say this, but in my head, I might say in my head, well, I think her version of the question of fat, no, she doesn't look that way. But in my head, I might be like, well, she looks a little bigger, but I don't.
There's a way. So you could take this to the extreme. Imagine your significant other says, "Hey, does this shirt make me look like the worst piece of shit person in history?"
But that's what they're asking,
right? But you would never say yes to that question, right? You would always say no. But clearly they're asking because they don't feel they feel self-conscious, they don't feel right. So does this whatever make me look fat question, and obviously you already identified it, is not the question. That's not that's the subterfuge.
Yeah And obviously I can't dictate to my wife how she sees her body and all that stuff, but I would just like to hope that a question like that wouldn't come out of the blue and I would have no way of addressing it honestly such that it wouldn't harm my partner. You know what I mean? If I were in that situation, I would say to myself, wow, our relationship is so superficial, or she has not heard enough from me about how I feel about her in its entirety, that to answer this question honestly would destroy her and my relationship with her. Right. You know what I mean? Like, there are probably circumstances where maybe someone has body dysmorphia or something, and I would tread lightly and maybe massage the statement a little bit more, of course. such that. But even then, you know, if I knew someone had body dysmorphia, I would hope that we would have talked about it, and I would have hoped that when they asked me that question, I'd be like, honey, you know, when you ask me that question, it puts me in this really weird space because you're beautiful and I love you, and bodies change over time, and I don't want to have this be a triggering moment.
And then they're like, wait, what? No, I meant PHAT. Does these make me look fat? And what are you talking about?
Well, that's kind of what I was talking about. I mean, I know you have this like 90s rap disorder, and you know, we're not there anymore, honey. All right, well, that does it for that episode, and we are done, Berto.
We're done. Woo!
We finished all the emails.
Freedom!
I mean, there's still stuff left on the list, but it's not from the listeners. It's just from me. Like, there's a list, Berto, that I want to do with you sometime where it is different articles ranking the best songs of all time.
Ooh.
And we could go over them and like, I'm guessing you're going to get angry at some of it, but I'm guessing you're going to like some of it too.
Okay.
And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because
you deserve it.